On Monday, the review embargo was lifted for the new Bioware game Dragon Age: The Veilguard, and pretty much immediately we saw positive reviews pouring in from all these major media outlets right here. You can see this post over here on X is just listing off many of the positive scores, and you can see this reflected in the Metacritic score, which it's currently sitting at an 84 out of 100, so pretty good all things considered. We don't have the audience score just yet, obviously, because the game isn't out yet. That's the one I'm really more interested in. I mean, critic score, okay, that's one thing, but this is what I normally pay attention to is the audience score. But some people are looking at this critic score and thinking that seems a little bit too suspicious, or it seems too high for what we're getting out of this, especially since some of the people who did get early access were basically painting a polar opposite picture of this game. And that's where we're getting this article from that Park Place with the headline, Bioware accused of astroturfing reviews for Dragon Age: The Veilguard. I have some issues with the arguments that's being made in this, and I will address those. But first, let's just look at these accusations that they're astroturfing these reviews, and then I'll kind of dive in and give you my opinion on what I think is going on here. Former World of Warcraft team lead Mark Kern accused Bioware of astroturfing reviews for its upcoming Dragon Age: The Veilguard game. Kern's accusations comes in the wake of YouTuber Fextra Life accusing Bioware of attempting to manipulate reviews by not handing out review codes to creators critical of the game. And I did a video Monday kind of talking about this because some of the accusations were people who had early access to the game and were very positive towards it were denied review codes for the game. But they also pointed out that some of the people who were positive towards it in the early play still didn't get review codes. So I don't really necessarily hold that against Bioware for picking and choosing who they're going to give review codes to, because they can't just hand them out to every streamer, or they're not just going to hand them out to every streamer. They're going to be a little bit more selective about that. But one thing that I pointed out in my video on Monday that I thought was kind of interesting is there was one streamer who said that she got a copy of a review code for it after she told Bioware that she was non-binary. Then she just proceeded to trash the game pretty much outright. And even though her opinion is clearly subjective, it seems kind of strange that someone would have all these technical issues that they can list as reasons why the game is so bad. Yeah, a lot of these major outlets would also just like shower with praise, because a lot of the scores that they actually did get, you would think that means the game is just perfect, but she was pointing out just a bunch of other minor grievances with it. Just even technical stuff, bad animation, bad dialogue, things like that. You can check out that video of mine if you want to go into a little bit more detail about it. But let's continue on with this. Just think about this for a second. If you're on the EA end and you're trying to manipulate review scores because you want high review scores, what are you going to do? You're going to research press and content creators and what they usually give to games score-wise to give you a general idea of how they're going to review the game, he added. And this is one of the issues I actually have with this sort of thing, because they're saying that they're researching the people that they're giving out review codes to, but the previously mentioned woman who said she was non-binary and then got a review code and proceeded to trash the game. If you do any research into her, because I didn't know who she was prior to the story I talked about with her, but you can just scroll through her X account and you can see memes like this: PS5 with DEI, PC without DEI, this other one right here. And it's just kind of stuff like this all over her timeline. And I don't speak Spanish, but still I can just kind of look at these memes and get an idea of kind of, if you're a company who's making a game that's trying to push DEI and other things like that, then it looks like this isn't a person who's necessarily going to give you a positive score. This one. Okay, I'm not going to play the whole thing because there's some violence in that, but you get the idea what I'm talking about right here. If the accusation is that they're researching the people that they're giving review codes to in order to make sure that they're going to give them a positive score, well, then giving it to that person, I think, is a pretty big red flag. But I don't know, maybe they just missed that one or something like that, or they just heard she was non-binary and didn't question any further, something like that. Or maybe she just slipped through the cracks, because after all, you can't necessarily guarantee that everyone that you're giving a review code to is going to give you a positive score, whether that's a media outlet or individual streamers. It says in the article, I want to be very clear that I don't think the press and creators publishing their videos early are going to be lying. These reviewers have been screened to maximize the chance that they're seeing positive reviews. They will probably be some expectations, of course. I don't think everyone's going to give the game a positive review, but EA is banking that those are few and far between in an attempt to keep the aggregate score of the game high, he added. And to that end, I really don't have a problem with the company picking and choosing who they decide to give a review code to, because like I previously mentioned, that's basically just an extension of their marketing department. So they're not going to just give it out to people that they know are going to trash the game or know aren't necessarily going to be favorable. Because if you're making a fantasy game, why would you give it the review code to a critic who has a history of not liking fantasy game? That doesn't really make any sense. So I can see why you would pass up on people like that, but still, you're going to try to manipulate things as much as possible. But the other part about that, though, where some of these companies might feel like they have to be a little bit kinder when they're giving review codes, I can definitely believe that, especially for some of the smaller creators. When you try to make money actually posting reviews like this, and then you have to consider like, well, do I really want to spend $50, $60, $70 on a game every time I want to make a video on it? But if you can actually get review codes, and if you're just kind enough where they'll continue to give you review codes, then maybe that's something, even if it's not necessarily conscious, will help inform your decision. But this following part that Mark Kearns actually talked about, I think is probably the worst bit about all this, because he pointed out the narrative director for Dragon Age the Veilguard actually said in a post some time ago, I want to see the phrase a triumphant return to form for Bioware, and that's in relation to Dragon Age the Veilguard. And this is something that Mark Kearns, aka Grums, pointed out, because he highlighted in many of the reviews that are being out about this game is that they're actually using the term triumphant return for Bioware. Smash JT also highlights that in his X post right here, return to form, return to form, return to form. You get the idea. Other people have actually pointed this out too. And that's where it gets a little bit dicey, because are they not so much as just giving them the review code and saying like, okay, just post what you think about it, but also saying like, hey, if you're going to give it positive, these are kind of some of the things that we want you to say about it, or these are some terms that you can use to describe it. If that kind of thing is going on, no, then that's another territory that I think is a bit more unethical on both sides of it. It's not just you simply marketing your game, but it's also trying to basically convince the other people that you're marketing it to, or the people who are supposed to be critical of you, what you should actually be saying about that game. Interestingly enough, all of this comes on the back of Ubisoft being exposed for working with third-party agencies that had final approval over what YouTubers could and could not say about Star Wars Outlaws. So it's not as if to suggest that this type of thing where the studio is basically telling reviewers and even some streamers what they should and should not say about the game. They're going to say like, oh, we're not telling you to lie, but if you like the game, these are some talking points that you can use. But in that accusation against the streamers for Star Wars Outlaws, they're basically saying that the ad agency that contacted them and gave them the review code is also saying like, we have to have final approval over your video as the terms of you actually receiving the review code. So it's not necessarily the studio doing it, it's another agency doing it. So the studio could be like, oh, we knew nothing about this, but you're the one who hired that agency to actually give out the review code. So you can't really feign ignorance on that end, but at least I don't think you should be able to feign ignorance to that sort of thing. So obviously that's a little bit dicey right there and pretty unethical, but still, that's pretty much the accusations that are going around about this type of thing going on. And like I said, we've seen that sort of thing before. It's a lot of studios aren't above that, especially when they're spending so much money on these games. They're going to try to put their best foot forward, and they're hoping that with good early reviews from critics that people will go out and buy the game. And by the time the audience score actually comes out, well, people have already spent the money on the game. They're like, well, we hate this game, but we are fooled by the early critic score, and now we don't like this game, and we're stuck with it at this point. Star Wars Outlaw, we saw something similar to that, where the review score for critics kind of went down a little bit, but the early ones were a lot more positive about it. Then people started playing the game and realized how much of a mess it actually was, and as a result, people stopped playing the game. So maybe if Dragon Age the Veilguard is actually just a mess like some of these streamers have pointed out, well then I think we'll see something similar to Star Wars Outlaw, where it might sell pretty well early on and then it'll just drop off a cliff and then people will stop playing it. Hopefully, at least I think in BioWare's mind that by that time that they would have made enough money on it in that opening week or so to pretty much make up the difference on that. But if it turns out the game is actually good and the critics are right, then we'll probably see this continue on. Right now, I'm really not sure what to believe, and that's why I say just look at what the audience is saying. Wait maybe a week or two after release, and just see if audience score is actually pretty good, and if you get good word of mouth from some streamers that you actually do trust, or some audience members that you actually trust, maybe even just word of mouth from friends, then maybe you should check it out. But if you're not getting anything positive from the audience after the game is released, well, then maybe you can pass this one up. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to click that like button and share this video out there because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.